Diagnosed on April 14th, 2008 with follicular lymphoma, which is a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If I had a really heroic, captivating, and inspiring survival story, I'd probably just repeat the tale each time. But my story is not so amazing, so I tend to talk about various aspects relating to cancer for each talk, and I definitely try to make each talk different. Nothing worse than for me to bore to death the caring group of team managers, coaches, captains, and mentors that have heard me speak so many times before. Now, last year at the kickoff speech for the San Jose Rock and Roll Half Marathon, or maybe the year before, I mentioned that my search for a suitable speech topic sometimes made me feel like a minister preparing for a sermon. Somehow that analogy of mine wasn't clear, and someone in the audience told me later that he hadn't known I was a minister. Mike, are you here? There he is,
He's right here.
It's just a coincidence that I called on Mike at that moment. Theme word for each speech. And this Saturday an event occurred which made the selection of the theme word for this talk quite easy for me. So by a strange coincidence, my bike ride with the Team in Training Iron Team ended at exactly the same time and location as the conclusion of this team's 14-mile training run and walk at Greystone Park. So I slapped on my running gear and ran against the flow, cheering you all on as you finished your longest run or walk of the training season. Congratulations on that, by the way. Perhaps some of you saw me or heard me cheer, "Go team! You're looking strong. Great job. Way to go!" Now, many of you know I know, so spotting you in the trail to cheer was not so difficult. For others, I relied upon your Team in Training shirts or hats to pick you out from the crowd of strangers. So I saw a runner in the distance with the TNT Passion shirt on. I see one right there. And so as she approached, I yelled out, "Woohoo! Looking good!" And just at that moment, I noticed that her shirt didn't read Passion, but Pioneer, as in Pioneer High School. And of course I intended my cheer to mean that she was looking strong and fast. I'm sure any of you would have understood had I dressed you, but my brain quickly realized that, woohoo, looking good, from a strange man to a teenage girl might come across differently. So some of you might have figured out by now that the theme for tonight is embarrassment. Okay, so I obviously made a huge fool of myself this Saturday. And I mean, for those of you that know me, you might say, so what's new about that? But another question might be, Keith, you've gone on for several minutes, and all we've learned is that the theme word for tonight is embarrassment. What has that got to do with cancer? Anyway. Well, let's explore the theme of embarrassment from a few angles relating to cancer. First, let me bring up the topic of needles and injections. I don't like them. But who does? But I am crazy afraid of them. An irrational fear. In fact, it's got a name. Trypanophobia. Now, you can imagine that blood cancer diagnosis, testing, and treatment require countless injections. The doctors and nurses all offered exactly the same words of carefully considered medical advice to my panic, fear, and dread to every injection. You'll get over it. I'm sure their actual thoughts were, don't be such a baby. And after 4 years of being injected, my fear, my trypanophobia, remains intact. Their words of consolation were both wrong and useless. Fortunately, I have a friend, a non-medical professional, who knew of a special prescription numbing cream that can be applied beforehand to the injection site. It goes by the acronym EMLA, and I've used this cream many times in the last few years. It works. But the first time I used it, I read the instructions which detailed the dosage amount. The dosage tables had headings that read 1 to 3, 3 to 12, 12 to 24. But I was 47 at that time. What was the dosage for my age group? Then I realized it wasn't intended for adults. Fine. I was over 24. But wait, it was 24 months. I was taking medication as a 47-year-old that isn't even used for patients beyond 2 years old. Oh my God, I am such a baby. Embarrassment. I'd also like to discuss tonight's theme word as it applies to the relationship between people with cancer and their friends. When one is first diagnosed with cancer, especially a cancer without a cure such as mine, it is often difficult for the patient to know how to spread the news, or whether it should be spread at all. Not necessarily out of sense of privacy, but of how to convey the news when friends might feel that they can offer so little. I mean, if the best doctors in the world can offer no cure, it can seem like a terrible burden to place the news upon a friend. Do you want to tell everyone, one person at a time? How long would that take? How would your friends feel if they learned about the news second, third, or fourth hand? Would they feel like second, third, or fourth class friends? It could be a very awkward time for newly diagnosed cancer patients. And what if they say too little, too much, too late to their friends? The wrong decision may prove so embarrassing. But of course the news does come out, and news of cancer travels fast. And then the irony comes in, for the friends that learn of the cancer often do not know how to respond. What is the right thing to say, to do? Does the person share your religious beliefs? Do they want to be left alone? Do they want help? Do they want to talk? To cry? In fact, many friends of cancer victims are so afraid to do the wrong thing that they do nothing at all. Among many concerns, they are embarrassed that they might do exactly the wrong thing. So how should cancer news be conveyed? And what should the response be? And I'm sure you knew it was coming to this, but here it is. There is no single right way for either victim or friend. But embarrassment should not be the deciding factor in making the decisions. And let me extend this discussion to this team. How many of you are first-time participants in Team and Training? Fantastic. For those that raise their hands, how many of you have talked at length to an honoree this season? 2 honorees. If you did not raise your hand to those last questions, don't be embarrassed. It's actually the typical case, as you just saw. Talking to someone, a stranger, about their cancer seems so deeply personal. And what should one say? It could be very embarrassing. But here's my message to you. The cancer survivors that have volunteered to be honorees want to talk about their cancer, to put a face to the disease, and they want to spend time in conversation with you. The honorees are very grateful for all that you do to help raise money to fight cancer. So please cast aside your concerns about embarrassment and make an effort to talk to the honorees. And if you want to cheer on other runners, looking good is a pretty risky shout, unless you're positive the person is a teammate. Otherwise, the consequences can be so embarrassing. Go team.